Welcome back. I was frustrated and fighting with these damn videos and internet, but I finally got it to upload. So I hope you enjoy the video. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let's just watch this panel.
In rampant, unabated fashion with little or no hope for justice. The New York State Assembly awarded Ms. Short Women of Distinction honor. A federal prosecutor in Kansas City, Missouri, featured her blog, currently known as www.consentawareness.net, in the indictment that led to the conviction of a serial rapist with 30 plus victims. She has testified before the New York State Assembly and New York City City Council. She was featured on Nightline, the CBS Evening News, BuzzFeed, Inside Edition, CBC, the Canadian National Radio Station, NYA Today, MMN, the New York Star Ledger, Vice, the Kansas City Star, and additional media outlets. Ms. Short is determined to rectify society's concept of consent in order to spare our present and future generations from sexual assault. And Ms. Short, thank you so much for being here. And as I understand, your organization currently has a bill pending in Albany to define consent in our laws. And as I am reading your book, I was surprised to find that only about 35% of rapes are reported and less than 2% will result in conviction. And a lot of this, in large part, is due to not defining what consent is, and that a staggering 76% of our states and territories do not define consent.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on today. This is such a very important topic. And I think that we need to clarify for society what's going on here so that we can all demand the changes that are necessary in order to make the world a safer place. Because our justice system is very, very badly broken. And people, including people that are law professors, people that are in the legal establishment, all think that our laws are fine. They're not. In the Weinstein case, when the jury asked for the definition for consent, the judge told them, use your common sense, because there's no definition for consent in New York's laws. In the Cosby case, the jury also asked for the definition for consent, and they were also told to use their common sense because there's no definition for consent in Pennsylvania's laws. Quite frankly, there is no correct definition for consent in any laws in any state across the United States, and certainly all over the world, we have the same problem. So here in New York, we've actually introduced a bill. It's number A6540A, and it states very clearly that consent is freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. We're not making this up. There's actual precedents for it. Nuremberg Code, which was created way back around 1947, 1949, as a result of the Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials took place because of the terrible experiments that were made during World War II by the Nazis on concentration camp victims. And 21 Nazis were tried, and Nuremberg Code resulted. And Nuremberg Code is the reason that when you go for your COVID vaccination, you have to sign a consent form, because Nuremberg Code defines consent. And consent in Nuremberg Code is freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. Another place that you'll see this definition is in General Data Protection Regulation. And in General Data Protection Regulation, basically, it's protecting your data security on the internet. General Data Protection Regulation was actually became effective at the same time that I presented my TEDx talk. And that was quite a surprise to me. I simply put information together and did the research to determine what consent should actually be how it should actually be stated. And I was absolutely shocked to find that GDPR states consent in exactly the same way that I had stated it in my TEDx talk. So if you watch my TEDx talk, you'll see that there are basically 3 different types of agreement that can take place. One is assent, and that's agreement on the face of it. Another is acquiescence, and that means agreement under duress. And then there's consent, which is freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. And that's the kind of agreement that enables people to legally conduct sexual, have sexual contact with other people. When you're using forcible compulsion, when you're using coercion, when you're defrauding someone. And I like to say that there are basically 3 F words that should never be used in sex. And those 3 F words are force, fear, and fraud. And if you're using force, fear, or fraud, you're influencing the victim in a malicious fashion. And no one has the right to undermine your agency, otherwise known as self-determination, through a malicious means. Until we actually define consent in our laws, that's not the case. That's not how our laws treat consent. In fact, our laws basically say that the words and conduct of the victim will denote whether or not consent took place. And that language is why defense attorneys get to rip to shreds the character of the victim when you come forward and make a claim against someone for sexually assaulting you. Once we define the word consent in our laws, that cannot happen, because the focus in determining whether or not the crime took place will be, did the person use a malicious means in order to undermine your self-determination? And if they did, they're not seducing you, they're sexually assaulting you. So we need this law.
Right. So my question was, so why are we having trouble getting this law through? Because in my mind, I'm thinking we have legislators, right, that are making laws. And to me, they are word masters, right? So they absolutely understand the difference between consent and agreement, right? They absolutely understand that. So it seems almost intentional that they will let this law drop, because they understand it when it's property. They understand it when it's theft, but they don't understand it when it comes to a woman's body, right? So what is it outside of like this petition? What is it that we need to do to get this through? Because I want to call them on it. Like, you guys know exactly what you're doing. This is what it is, and you guys are intentionally doing this. You want to hold power again over women's bodies again, because this affects mostly women, right? There's a percentage 100%. Of men that suffer from assault, but I mean mostly women. So again, here you are holding yourselves not accountable for something or protecting your group, right? I want to call them on it. That's what I want to do, but I know that may not be what can we do?
Well, what we can do is exactly what we're doing right now, and that's trying to drum up momentum by the public in calling their legislators. We have a petition that will support passage of the bill, and we need for everyone to sign that petition. These legislators look to see what kind of momentum you have, what kind of support you have behind what you're what you're trying to pass in the way of legislation. And they have to know that you've got votes behind you, right? That's that's really what they care about. They care about whether or not they're going to be reelected. And right. if they know that we're so outraged that we're not going to vote for them unless they pass this bill, then they'll pass the bill. But right now, they think that the momentum is on the other side, that if we actually stand up and recognize what consent is, that a lot of people are going to be unhappy about that, because
it's funny she said that we should begin to hold our votes, because I've been telling people that, well, people I know personally. I've been telling people that since last year, since before the big election happened. Hold your motherfucking vote if you want any change. If everybody was to come together and stop voting these people into office, then who would be in office? Except for who we feel should be there. Especially in a government that, be clear, we never asked them to assemble. Unless I missed something in history, when did anybody ask them to assemble a government so that they can run everybody's lives? But that's a different topic for another day.
Because for so many years,
people, mostly men, sorry, but that's just the way it is, have a way defiling women, and we we know that men and men can be sexually assaulted. So I don't want to come across as failing to recognize that this situation is affecting both men and women. It is this is a fearless law. It will benefit men, benefit women, will benefit everyone, depending regardless of age. And we need we need to stress that point. We need to understand that we've gone through
generation after generation of chattel, of concepts that are rape mentality is embedded in our laws. We see the language in our laws that the words and conduct of the victim determine whether or not consent takes place. And that's absolutely absurd, because your words and conduct can be undermined through a malicious means like force or fraud or fear. And if your agency is undermined by a malicious means, you're not consenting. You could be assenting, which is agreement on the face of it. You could be acquiescing, which is agreement under duress. But you can't be consenting, which is freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. And if we can get the public behind this bill, we can get this bill passed. These legislators have to be afraid that if they don't pass it, we're not going to vote for them. Instead of what they're thinking now, if they pass it, they're going to lose votes, right? They're going to lose votes. Yeah. Right now they think, well, one of the obstacles that we run across when we're addressing this with legislators is that they're very much influenced by the legal establishment. And the legal establishment, particularly defense attorneys, do not want to pass this bill because they want to continue being able, like Donna Rotuno in Weinstein's case, they want to be able to pick apart that victim. They want to blame the victim in order to get the case dismissed for the client.
Right. And it also covers up that abuse of power, because like you were saying that that men are also protected, right? There is a smaller percentage of men that are assaulted that we know of, right? And it seems to me that with that smaller percentage of men that these men are in turn disposable, because the abusers of power are the other side of that, right? These are the assaulters. And what we're seeing lately, very rich, high-powered men in positions of power are the ones abusing. And when you say, because people in their mind, when you think of rape, you think of violent rape. Because reading your book, put that into perspective for me. When you have that violent rape, and then you have the acquiescence. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my contacts. I don't want to. So you kind of, you're not consenting, but you feel forced because I have to pay rent.
Sorry to interject, but I had asked Nosey, I said, listen, there was something that someone said, if you can put it up real quick, if you have it really quick, I feel like we need to discuss this because I feel that it happened so much that a lot of people aren't even realizing what's really happening. And Joyce was the one that made me think back to just younger me, younger Andrea, having sex, doing these things, and just thinking back to the things that were done to me, and I didn't even realize what was happening. And so Joyce put it into perspective. This young lady says, I once gave consent because I didn't want to lose my life. I was in fear, technically, I was assaulted. She said a very powerful thing, because think about how many times a guy, you told a guy no, or a woman, or whoever you're interested in, you said no. And they were like, oh, but baby, and you were like, no. And they were like, but baby, and you're like, no. And they're like, baby, you're like, oh, no. And they're like, but baby, if you love me, and you're like, fine. You're not like, yes, I love you, or yes, this is what I want to do, or yes, this is how I'm moving. You're just like, fine. Like, you've been beaten over the head with it so much. You're just like, fine. Just think about how many interactions you've had that you're not even willing to speak about, that you barely even acknowledge. And this is real.
I'm also
I can look back on that. Huh?
I'm also glad you brought that up, because there were instances, there were times where, after having sexual intercourse with a partner, like after, I felt like I didn't really want to do that, but I felt like I had to in that moment. And then, I felt so disgusted afterwards, but I didn't know what to do. I felt like,
it was like buyer's remorse. It was like buyer's remorse on steroids. You know,
so for the young people whom are watching Joyce, what could you say to them, if they have been through that or may encounter that? What could you say to the young people that are watching?
Well, I think that one of the things that people should be aware of is that when somebody is asking you to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you've got to say no. Really. The person that's going to make you feel obligated is a person that you don't want to be with. Really, I think that our young folks need to understand that people have to respect your boundaries, and you really have to recognize that you're entitled to your boundaries, and you need to stand behind them, and you need to be able to. You need to be able to understand that, and they need to be able to understand that there are boundaries, and they have to respect those boundaries. And only if it's codified in law does that boundary really exist. There were actually two axioms from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that really stick with me, and I go back to them often in these discussions. One of them has to do with the fact that morality shapes our laws, and laws shape our morality. So we have to do two things. We have to get the public to understand what consent is, and we have to get our legislators to put the teeth in our law that supports that, so that so that there's no guessing game about this. The other thing that Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that always sticks with me is that we change nothing until we change our laws. So, we're all talking about Me Too, and telling our stories, and Time's Up, and all these wonderful things that really have enabled the concerns about sexual assault to gain voice, gain oxygen. But just having stories and just having oxygen doesn't change it. And we need to change it. And the only way that we can change it, just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, it's by changing our laws. Laws change our morality. Look at abolition, for Christ's sake. Today we look back at slavery and think, oh my God, how could right-minded people in society actually have thought that there was anything humane or appropriate about having slaves. I mean, my God, it was an abomination. We know that today, and we know that because abolition changed our morality, right? And the same thing that we did with abolition, we have to do with sexual assault. We have to define consent so that we can, so that society can understand that there are boundaries, that you cannot influence a person through malice, and our laws will take care of the people that don't get it. The reality is, it will change morality because people by and large want to go to jail. And if you create the boundary and say, if you do this, you're going to go to jail, or there is the possibility that you'll go to jail, then the likelihood is that they're not going to do it. And I have to laugh all the time when prosecutors think, oh my God, we're going to have all these cases. If we define consent, we're going to be flooded with cases of sexual assault. No, you're not. It's going to change behavior. It's a transformational change. The other thing that people should be aware of is that there are different degrees. And you stated a couple of seconds ago about, the understanding of rape as being an element in all crime that treats forcible compulsion and crimes with weapons more harshly than other crimes. So if you conduct a sexual assault,
don't book a cheap hotel.
Happy birthday.
Fine, I'm totally fine, guys.
assault in which you're hitting someone over the head with a 2x4 or holding a gun to their head, then you're going to go to jail for 20 years. If you coerce them, then you're going to go to jail for 3 years. And a perfect example of this is the Weinstein case, because Weinstein was found guilty of raping Jessica Mann, and that case, raping her by coercion. And that case gave him a 3-year sentence. In the case of Mimi Haley, he was found guilty of forcibly sexually assaulting her. So because it was an aggravated offense, even though it was a sexual assault and not a rape, the aggravated offense got him a 20-year sentence. So in all crimes, we have a degree system that enables us to really express what the harm is that went on in that particular crime, and to punish people or hold them accountable in ways that are consistent with the gravity of the crime. And for that reason, if you defraud someone like Larry Nassar did, the crime would be a lesser crime than if you violently rape somebody by dragging them into an alley and you're a perfect stranger. Okay, so people say to me all the time, oh my God, if you do this, everybody's going to go to jail for 20 years, for this or that or this stupidity. No, it doesn't work that way. First of all, there are degrees, and there's a thing called de minimis claims. If you don't have enough evidence to prosecute, then the prosecutor isn't going to be able to do anything with your case, whether you have a consent law or whether you don't have a consent law. So, the bar is really pretty high for bringing a case of rape or sexual assault, and all this, concern on the part of the prosecutors that, the whole world is going to flood their gates and they're going to be inundated with sexual assault cases. It's just nonsense. What's going to happen is that sexual assault will diminish considerably, and there will be far less of it because people recognize what consent is. They're guided by that definition, and they know they're going to be held accountable, and they're not going to do it. It's that simple.
I just wanted to add something about the question about what do we tell people, young people. I feel very strongly, and it's true, that consent is a human right. And I find in our work with other survivors that having them know the correct definition of consent not only valuable because we need to know that, but it can help in with survivors with healing, with not having the self-guilt or the blame or shame that we put upon ourselves, because then we can finally realize that what happened to me was that my consent was violated. And I think that in educating young people, if we get the correct definition of consent, they will learn, guess what? If somebody's defrauding you, it's not consent. If someone's coercing you, it's not consent. You know, if somebody's making you afraid or forcing you to do something, that's not consent. And it's by knowing the correct definition, you know, we can help a lot of people with recovery and healing, and we can also, you know, help a lot of young people and even adults. I mean, this has helped me, just knowing this definition of consent. It's really set me free in a lot of areas, and I just think that you know, knowing this is so vital for so many reasons.
Yeah, it provides validation for the victim, and one of the most compelling things that a person can feel when they're going through this healing process is that their pain has been validated. That's why justice is so important, because it provides healing, validation, that the world recognizes the harm that you were dealt, makes you feel that you belong again, that you're not a pariah to society, that you're not, you know, you haven't been, you know, you feel unworthy. Unfortunately, defilement creates a sense of unworthiness for the person. And getting and understanding what consent is, as Nina just said, enables people to feel validated and to recognize that that the fault lies with the offender and not with them.
And then we should also touch on victim shaming, because a lot of victim shaming has been happening, and people are very quick. Because I can honestly say, before I went through what I went through, I was one of those people that felt like, well, why didn't she speak up sooner? Why did she hide it? What was she hiding? You know, what did she not want to come out? Why did she? And I had to have something happen to me for me to realize, like, victim shaming is real as well. And when, as women are the worst. Women will victim shame another woman just because she doesn't understand her pain. She doesn't understand what she went through, or maybe she did. And when she hears that story, she sees herself, and she sees in her mind that she's not worthy or that she deserved it. And I feel like as women, like for me to find Joyce, and for Joyce to immediately, I'm a younger woman, I'm not classy at all, you know, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a little hood, a little ratchet. And for Joyce to be like, hey, Andrea, I love you. I'm glad you told your story. Let me help you. Let me guide you. What can I do for you? You know, for me, that was big, to have another woman who was classy, in my opinion, who was poised, and who was like, you know, I'm like, okay, I see you, sis. That's how I felt. To have her come to me and don't judge me, and she didn't ask too many questions. She let me tell what I wanted to tell. She offered what she could. We need to push that more. We need to push women supporting women, because if women were to stand together and really support each other, we could move mountains, and it wouldn't be nothing that you couldn't tell us. Like, what do you mean? You did what to who? We storming the whole neighborhood, the block, the corner store. What's up? Like, we're here. We're loud, live, and in color. And we're tired of being silenced. And the culture of silence, it has to be broken. Women have to stop living in fear of being judged because of something they went through. Like, I was judged. I went through a lot. And I was like, listen, I don't care what you got to say. This person did this to me and it was wrong, and I'm going to fight, and I don't care who feels what about it. And just having women like Joyce, Nosey didn't have to like get interested. This isn't even her, you know, typical thing. And she was just like, wait, what? Women stand up, you know? So I feel that that's something that should be addressed, is stop victim shaming, and women stand up for women.
This is definitely Nosey's thing. Nosey has a long history with assault, as sexual assault victims. in
I
particular.
love her. I love Nosey. I wrote her. I was like, girl, wait, I love you. Can you help me? And she's so amazing because it was like having Joyce, you know. You know, like Nosey, she was like, wait, what's going on? And I told her, and she was like, hold on.
Wow. I think
It's everybody.
I'm sorry, I think we lost Joyce, but you know, Andrea, I think you were talking about some stories that, like, you know, maybe we should share to let people know, you know, when there weren't laws that define consent, which is everywhere, the kind of things that could happen. And if you hear a couple of these, you'll be pretty outraged. Joyce, I was just talking about, I could tell one of them about the like Alaska story because there was no law, or the Indiana. You can do the Indiana. I'll do the Alaska one first, if you don't mind. Okay, so in Alaska, they have this culture of, they still have a culture of hitchhiking, the Great Frontier, I guess. So a woman, you know, made an agreement to hitch a ride with this guy to go somewhere, and the next thing she knows, she comes to consciousness on the side of the road, and this is gruesome, but she feels that her face is all wet. Okay. So, you know, she was knocked out. She was sexually assaulted. And the man who did this was arrested, and he went to trial. And guess what? He was not only acquitted, but his record was expunged. Why? Because there is no law in Alaska. And further, we can also talk about this. There is no specific law in Alaska saying that particular crime was a sexual assault, that particular action. Okay, so he got off, and he went free. Because before you tell your Indiana story, Joyce, I'll tell this. Our sexual assault laws are very strange, and they're very gruesome. If you read through the statutes, it's like if you put point A on point B, and then this is happening, if this touches here, or if this gets on this. It's very interesting, though, isn't it? Because aren't there an infinite number of ways you can be sexually assaulted? Also, is there a laundry list like this in terms of murder or theft? No. If somebody takes your life, you're dead. Okay, and that's all we need to know. But instead, in sexual assault laws, it's kind of like, you know, if this touches this and that, and some of them are still very, you know, non-LGBT friendly, you know. So, you know, that's all a problem. If we just say what consent is, that non-consensual sex is sexual assault, and consent is freely given, knowledgeable, informed agreement, that covers everything. Okay, we don't have to worry about it. After that, Alaska made a law that said, okay, if you do this on a woman's face, that's against the law. But guess what? That just plugged a legal loophole. What about any other kind of, you know, arcane crime or different kind of sexual assault? That's not covered because consent is not defined in the law. So Joyce can tell the story about what happened in Indiana.
Before I do so, though, I wanted to bring out a point. You know, these legislators rushed to the legislature in Alaska in order to make sure that what this gentleman did became a crime in the state of Alaska. And a senator basically picked up on the concept. We had contacted them and had several conversations with them about defining consent in their laws. They ended up with a bill that instead of defining consent in their law, they picked on the military statute that is embedded into the federal code. And in that military statute, it says the words and conduct of the victim determines whether or not they're consenting. And the military, all right, Alaska has the highest rate of rape of any state throughout the United States. Guess who has an even greater rate of rape than the state of Alaska? The US military. So please explain to me why the state of Alaska thinks that they're going to solve their sexual assault problem, not by defining the meaning of consent, but by adopting the language from the federal code in order to try to ameliorate their rape problem. I mean, it's mind-boggling how ridiculous, these legislators can be, because she basically felt, well, this justification, it's in federal code, so it must be acceptable. I can get it passed, so that's what I'm going to do. But in the meantime, what she's not doing is taking the necessary step to actually make the kind of correction in Alaska's law that needs to be made.
We tried to fight that. Yeah.
Miss Joyce, I'm so sorry if did I interrupt someone? Oh,
no,
okay. Miss Joyce, Alaska, as we all know, is very high in sex trafficking and human trafficking, along with Utah and it's another one. I mean, I'm sorry to curse. It's another one, but I can't think of that state. But it's Utah and another state that's close to Utah. But
I think it's Illinois.
Iowa, maybe it's Iowa. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Nevada, I think, with Las Vegas, though, maybe.
Oh, I can understand that with Las Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, but they are very high in sex trafficking, and there are a lot of people whom are running for to become a candidate, like a senator, in those states that are involved in those crimes. So I'm not sure if Alaska, if the state senators or whomever is involved in it, the governor or whatever, if he's involved in those crimes. But maybe that's why they're not doing protect those women.
Well, look at Andrew Cuomo. I mean, we've got the governor of the state of New York who doesn't understand consent, right? Our legislators do not understand consent, or don't want to understand what
he don't want to understand it, because he's just as sick as his brother Chris. His brother Chris is a groper, and he admitted to groping a woman inappropriately, whom was his boss, and he groped her inappropriately. So it runs in the Cuomo's family. It just does.
We coming through with entitlement to the people's bodies. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the concept of sex trafficking, because I want to explain something to you that's kind of unique about what we've done in New York. And I want to raise 2 points. One is that in the state of New York, we found 162 uses of the word consent in penal code. 162 times the word consent appears in New York State's penal law, from arson to theft to sex trafficking to sexual assault. So instead of introducing this bill under Section 130, which would specifically apply to sexual assault only, it was introduced in general law. Doing that enables us to get across to society that consent is always consent. There's only one definition for consent. It's a word, like any word. It's got a real definition. And the same thing that applies to sexual assault applies to sex trafficking and domestic violence and stealthing and the misuse of cyber images on the internet. It also pertains to theft. It pertains to arson. It pertains to kidnapping. There aren't 5,500 definitions for consent. There is only one, and that is really give a knowledgeable and informed agreement. So to get it passed in New York under general law will set a precedent that other states can follow. And that's the other thing that I wanted to raise is people ask me all the time, well, I live in Arizona. Why should I, sign this petition to get the law changed in New York? And the reason for that is legislators look to other laws because they can feel justified. If another state has done it, then it must be okay, or at least I can justify that it is okay. They don't like to invent the wheel. They want to find a wheel and then apply that wheel in their own jurisdiction. So once we get it passed in New York, other states will follow suit. We're working with New Jersey right now. We're working with Pennsylvania right now. And it's very likely that it will set a precedent that will literally echo throughout the halls of justice throughout the United States and around the world. So please, I understand if you're living in Arizona or you're living in California or you're living in Puerto Rico, it doesn't really seem like, New York is going to help you. But New York is where we have the bill. It's where we got the most momentum. And to be able to seize on that and create the law here in New York is going to help everyone, everywhere, all around the world. I can't emphasize that enough. So please, pick up your, tap on our change.org petition. It will take you exactly 3 seconds, and sign our bill and spread it to, share it with everyone you know, and ask them to share it with everyone that they know. So
absolutely,
momentum.
Sign it and make comments as well. We welcome comments. They're very valuable. Also, we have international support for this. We have consent outreach ambassadors in Nigeria, in India, in Pakistan, in the UK, Hong Kong, Canada. We have people who are interested in consent everywhere. And we're trying to also make headway into other countries. And people are watching this, the world is watching this, and it's very important that we promote this petition and also educate our friends and family about consent, and really let them know that, we're not safe. We are not protected. When we go and visit legislators across the United States in person and on Zoom, not one of them knows that their state does not define consent. Not one. They're shocked.
I have a question for you all. I've heard of talks of a particular person making a consent app. With these new bills that are being presented, and hopefully, my prayers is, and I'm claiming that they will pass. Do you feel that a consent
Repeat after
app
me.
where
3, 2,
even
1,
teenagers,
1, 2,
men and women
2,
can
3.
actually go onto the app and sign off with their signature? Do you think that would be beneficial in these particular cases?
No, I say no, because Joyce pointed to the number one reason: consent under duress, which is not consent. Whereas the law would say she did it, it doesn't matter why she did it, she just did it. Where you're like, but wait, I really only did it because I was scared. How do you know that someone won't say, hey, sign this app? If you don't sign this app, I'm going to kill your kid, or I'm going to tell the world, or I'm going to do this, and then you sign it. No.
Correct. I've also seen there's like a condom now. Yeah. It takes 4 hands to open or something like that. And, they're saying this promotes consent. This means that, if you open this condom, you are consenting.
Yeah, you can be forced to open it. You can be coerced to open it.
Correct.
You can be tricked into opening it.
There's so many gimmicks, and what we're trying to say is, let's push them out of the way and just get this, this ironclad legislation passed. Then we're going to be more protected. We're going to have a protection. If we're survivors, it's going to, help with prevention. And this is really the essence of what we need. Again, like Joyce was saying, with Me Too, Time's Up, It's on Us. Those are great ways to raise awareness. But what is the action item? What's the solution? How can we really protect ourselves? And that is to define consent in the law.
Also, just flipping the patriarchy regarding the saying where I feel like women were raised, but men, they have boys will be boys, but it's just time to also teach men to be accountable for their actions, even as children, because I've seen child on child molestation. That's a huge thing. I think it needs to start at home, the daycare, elementary, and all the way up into college, especially college campuses where, rape numbers and assault numbers are very high on college campuses.
I just wanted to speak to college campuses. I hope I didn't interrupt you. We have this organization, It's On Us. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's On Us is an initiative that was begun in the Obama White House. And what that is it's an organization that works primarily with college campuses. And what it does is say, okay, we're going to raise awareness about sexual assault, and we're going to have you sign a petition. And the petition starts like this: non-consensual sex is sexual assault. Well, that's true. But what is consent? Okay. We don't have a definition for consent. And very often, if in colleges, they all have their own rules, like under Title IX or conduct rules. Very often, their rules do not replicate what the rules are in the town or the laws are in the town. So they're pretty useless. And we're just wanting to have a codification here. Let's define the word in the law so that will work together. We're hoping, we're trying to get the attention of It's On Us to say, work with us to spread the word about defining consent, because you're talking about consent, and consent is important, and non-consensual sex is definitely sexual assault. But until we define consent, what does it mean?
Exactly. And do you all mind while I try to explain the parts of the bill for those that may not know exactly what the bill is really trying to do, which is, of course, it's going to benefit a lot of women or, whoever, because the U.S. Bureau of Justice statistics report that a sex crime is committed every 73 seconds. That's a lot. And of course, when this bill is passed, it's going to, of course, define consent as freely giving, knowledgeable, and informed agreement, obtained without the use of malice such as forcible, compulsion, duress, coercion, deception, fraud, concealment, or artifice, as Ms. Joyce has explained, just so everyone can recap and understand the importance of signing this particular petition and getting these laws passed, especially with women. We're all in women groups on Facebook. I'd say share this petition within your groups of women. Text your family, text your girlfriends and your phone. And I think it's just time to make sure that this is done, not just in Pennsylvania and New Jersey and New York. I know in my state, North Carolina, it needs to be done.
Absolutely. The latter part that you just stated is no longer on the bill. So I wanted to make that clarification. Because we submitted this bill in general law, we wanted to make sure that it would apply to every single utilization that, all 162 statements that included consent in various crimes. So the bill has really been simplified and stripped down to being specific about the definition and not the provisions. Okay, provisions tell you how to behave, and definitions tell you what something is. What we want is to know what consent is, because if you know what consent is, then all those things, forcible compulsion, coercion, fraud, deception, artifice, all of those things are understood if you understand that consent is freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. So without abutting things that could be, unintended consequences is the actual terminology that legislators use. So in order to avoid unintended consequences, we've stripped it down to the very basic sense of what the definition for consent is. So the next time that Weinstein goes before a jury, that judge, when the judge is asked, what's the definition for consent, that judge can say, freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. So now just go back and deliberate. Did Weinstein have freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement from the plaintiff?
I also wanted to say, it looks like you guys have a lot of enthusiasm for sharing our hashtags, which are FGKIA, freely given, knowledgeable, informed agreement, and codify consent. But I also wanted to talk very briefly about some hashtags we see out there that are problematic. We're seeing a lot of hashtags that say hashtag informed consent, hashtag knowledgeable consent, hashtag, things like that. Well, that's confusing because guess what? By its very nature, consent is knowledgeable. It is informed. It is affirmative. That's another thing people say. Affirmative consent drives us crazy. Informed consent drives us crazy because, again, consent is informed. It's affirmative. It is all those things. And the other one that we dislike very much is yes means yes. Oh my goodness, that's horrible. Of course, no means no.
Right.
But yes doesn't always mean yes. If there's coercion, force, fear, or fraud, if an agreement is induced by force, fear, or fraud, that agreement is not consent. Yes means yes has got to go.
Joyce, there's a question for you. I don't know if you're familiar with the R. Kelly case. Are you?
Not terribly.
Okay.
I don't know the specifics of it, but I know that he has been charged with a lot of very hideous things that he's done to people underage.
Right. So you know the basics about the case.
Yeah.
So they're saying that
All right, so you can still answer the question.
Oh, okay. Well, with the RICO, it's interesting because isn't this interesting? They're bringing financial elements into this, organized crime aspects of it into this. I think that's wise because they definitely want to get him. But isn't it interesting? Because it comes back to the fact that consent is not defined in New York law, where R. Kelly is currently being, the jury's deliberating. It's very interesting, right? Because it's I knew when the R. Kelly case was happening. What did we hear? We heard all these things. She could have left it any time. Well, she said yes. She wanted to be there. All these kind of tropes we hear when somebody's in an abusive relationship. Okay, so because it's more difficult to prove those things because the law doesn't define consent, they're going to look to these things with RICO charges where, say, if they have receipts or if they have tax returns or something like that, that's something that they can have in, black and white to prove something. But, it's because they're finding deficiencies and maybe proving that consent was violated. And that's not a wonder because it's not defined in New York. That's my hot take on it, Joyce.
I agree with you. It reminds me of the story of Mario Anton out in Kansas City, Missouri. So one day I'm sitting here, just where I'm sitting right now, which happens to be my kitchen, and I was having my morning coffee, and I get a call from a gentleman by the name of Tony Rizzo. He's a reporter for the Kansas City Star. And he says to me, Miss Short, do you know that your webpage was used by a federal prosecutor in the indictment? They actually quoted your webpage in the indictment that locked up a serial rapist. And I have to tell you that the tears just kind of sprung into my, oh, thank you. I was like, when you sit here and write, I'm an author, and you sit here and you ponder over your book and the grammar and the text and everything, and you wonder whether anybody's ever going to read it or whether it's ever going to have an impact on someone. And to hear that they had actually used, what I had put together in order to make that change. But here's what happened with Mario Anton. Okay, Mario Anton told these women that he was a porn videographer and that he had contracts with Playboy overseas, and that he would audition these women for porn videos. He would pay them $2,000 just for the audition itself, and no one in this country would ever see them. So not to worry, they weren't going to be distributed here in the United States. And a lot of women went along with it. And then he did not pay the $2,000. He's not a porn videographer. At the time that that Tony called me, there were 6 women that had come forward. By the time this went to court, there were 31 women that he had done this to. Did they get him for rape? No. The federal prosecutor who called him a serial rapist was not able to bring a rape charge. They got him on cyber fraud. And that's typically, going back to, what you were saying about the case against R. Kelly, they may be looking for an alternate way to lock him up because they may not be able to have sufficient evidence for, whatever the cases are that have sexual assault type, criminal activity. So, and what was interesting, I was wondering why in God's name didn't the Missouri prosecutor actually bring rape charges against this guy? There's 31 cases where he did this, and these are deception cases. And I looked up the statute in Missouri, and lo and behold, in Missouri, their second-degree rape statute says assent is not consent when induced by force, duress, or deception. Ta-da! I called up the prosecutor in Kansas City, Missouri, and I said, "Hi there, I'm curious, when are you going to bring charges against Mario Anton?" And she's like, "Mario who?" This is front page news in the Kansas City Star. And she's feigning, lack of knowledge about this incident, did nothing. So it's right there. Second-degree rape in Kansas City, Missouri. He's done this to 31 women. He was put away for 10 years for cybercrime and not for conducting sexual assault. Because
right, the money.
How do you think the women felt, that he wasn't charged on, they did to what he did to them, and but they had to get him on another charge. Like, have you ever spoken to any of the women? Do you know what they like, how they felt?
No, I haven't spoken to the women in that particular case. I've spoken to a lot of sexual assault victims. I've we're worked very closely with a lot of the Weinstein folks and the Cosby folks, NXIVM, in promoting the law and trying to get momentum. Look at the NXIVM case.
Yeah, I was going to say NXIVM is huge, and that's New York City. And a lot of people don't know about NXIVM, especially our generation. I was shocked because I did one of the forums, and I was like, wait, what?
Did you do an NXIVM forum?
I did. I did one of the initial ones because I did one through I forgot. It's something that it's something that Daniel had me do, and then we did the NXIVM, and then literally Lifetime came out with the NXIVM thing, and I was like, wait, what is this? And I saw it. Oh my God. And we watched all of them, and I was shocked because I was like, hold on. And this is here in New York State. I was shocked. I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. We're told, we're taught to buy into these programs. They're going to help elevate us, and they're going to, challenge every aspect of our lives, and we're going to get better versions of us. Girl, they was scamming and sexual assault. It was a whole hot mess. And I was like, wait, what? A hot mess.
You dodged that bullet. You dodged that
guys, bullet. I just Googled the NXIVM case because I didn't know anything about it. So it was a cult?
Okay, so wait. How are all these people such advocates for this, but none of them knew about the NXIVM case? Even I know about the NXIVM case, and I don't even deal with situations. I seen the documentary. I read the newspaper article. I followed the trial. How none of them up there knew about it? But I'm gonna let this video play a little bit more, and then I'm gonna end it. Because it's another almost hour long. So I'm gonna play a little bit more and then I'm gonna end it. But tomorrow I'm gonna be doing something different. What I'm gonna do tomorrow is I'm gonna do a video. It's gonna be a live video where I'm watching the episode of what I want to do the video on while I'm doing the video. So y'all will be able to hear it, because I want to get this conversation started as to, did this ex-actor, child star actor, use transgenderism as an excuse for murder and greed? But I'll explain more about that video tomorrow when I do it. We gonna finish watching a little bit more of this Nosey video, and then I'm gonna end the live.
Yes.
That's how Alexa Morgan funded. That's all I'm gonna say. Alexa Morgan said it was a cult. We did a podcast with Venexian survivors. I'll send the link with Sarah Edmondson and Nippy Ames of the Vow. And we did a whole podcast on the consent issue, because I felt very strongly that, of course,
it sounds like somebody is typing while they talking.
I know that in reading or studying talking with Sarah and Nippy, people they felt guilty. They said, well, why didn't I know? Why didn't I should have known better? Again, this is all the victim blaming we do to ourselves, and it's part of what I was saying earlier about how learning about consent is really healing and restorative. So we did a whole episode about that. And if you remember the doctor who actually did the branding of the women, if you know the story, she, as a physician, was saying, they consented, they exactly. Okay, because
you give me a brand and you tell me I'm gonna brand you with because you did this.
Yeah.
And if you don't do this, this is because what they were doing was, before they branded, they had them give all their dirty secrets, like all their dirty laundry was given. So by the time it was time to brand them, it was either A, you're going to join us, or B, we're going to air out all your dirty laundry. And just think about when you're at your most vulnerable, you're broken, you're at rock bottom. You're like, you have to be at rock bottom to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're here. And they get that. They get you vulnerable. You give them the tea. They say, all right, I'm going to brand you, or I'm spilling everything I know. You're going to take the brand. Did you consent to taking the brand? Oh, you're scared that people were going to find out who the real you were.
This was real. This was here in New York State. I was like, hold on.
I'm sorry. The whole time I thought, when I paused it last time, I thought my mic was unmuted, but it was not. So I'm going to say it again. Nexium, the man, he didn't just brand the people in the cult. Not only did he brand them, use them sexually and financially, but he also used actors and actresses to recruit other actors and actresses. That actress that used to star in Smallville as Clark's best friend, the little blonde hair chick, Chloe, She was in that car, and she was recruiting, or she was being sent out to try to recruit other actresses. That car went, and he branded them with his initials, his name initials, branded them like horses. USD graded. You know how they stamped the steak in the commercial at Outback? That's how he was branding them.
Did Netflix do this documentary too?
It's either Netflix or Hulu. Yup, one of the two.
Netflix did.
Yup, it's crazy, and it was like consent. They didn't. It was under duress. They were afraid. They were scared.
And wasn't a lot of women helping other women for this as well?
Yeah, a lot of it was under duress because they were under him. Now, granted, I wasn't there. I don't know. He was like the ringleader. He was like the pimp. And then you had like the madam. The madams was recruiting the women. It was like the trifecta. It was like the trifecta.
There's a lot of issues and religious and
you may be agreeing to something, but the dirty little secret that you're not told about, we may have a totally different kind of decision. So, these are the things that we're talking about too. I mean, that's what we discussed.
Matter of fact, Nexium act just like Scientology. They run it just the same. Only Scientology don't brand people. You just come up missing. Allegedly.
Thank you. Did anybody miss my phone cut off?
I was just talking about the past we did, and I sent the link.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's important. But we can talk, and we can bring all of our stories to life. But until we, just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, until we change our laws, nothing happens. Right. So that's what we got to do.
Absolutely.
Got to change our laws.
Including the people that are listening to us on the panel, the people that's in the comments. You guys can make a huge difference as well. And y'all listen to us and y'all comments and you guys can make a difference just by emailing legislators. Like make sure you email your legislators and let them know that you care about sexually abused women. Trust me, those laws can get changed.
Yes, tell them that you want to define consent, and you're tired of them doing nothing about it.
Yeah, I also sent our Instagram accounts. We have accounts on many platforms, but I think we're most active on Instagram. So if you want to just browse to our posts, we also have link trees, which is linked to a whole bunch of different things. Joyce's TEDx talk, Joyce's book is linked in there. Our petition's linked in there. Some articles, some podcasts we've been on, so you can check out the material.
Cartoons.
Oh yeah. We have a cartoon called Your Consent for Kids. It's very cute. It's about 7 minutes long, and it talks about consent in everyday situations like going to the playground, watching TV. But it's really, really informative for children from about 6 to 12. And the great thing about it is adults can learn about the 3 types of agreements, which are very important, differences in the 3 types of agreements. So it's very informative for adults as well.
I think this is a really powerful conversation. I'm glad that you all were able to join and have it. Everybody, I put the link to the petition. I'm going to drop it in the comments. For everybody, I hope that you all will sign the petition. And we can have more conversations like this.
Okay, well, I'm going to end this one here. I hope you enjoyed the video for the ones who stuck around to watch it. Please hit the like button, share if you want. And please come back and join me tomorrow for the video I'll be doing tomorrow. I may try to squeeze the Nexium story in because I know I could pull up some more information on that. or at least found one of the documentaries that was done on it. So we can do that one tomorrow too. And I'll see everyone later.